when you start learning, every article, every teacher, every course that you take, they teach you how to write code. Nobody teaches you how to read code. So in a lot of cases, reading code is actually much more difficult than writing code. Like, how would you improve the UX of Iron Man's suit?
Okay, that's a cool question.
And this was like, okay, how do you, like, first of all, it was like, I'm pretty sure that nobody asked this before. So it was like, how does he actually react to the problem? You know, like something that he was completely unprepared for. Like, how can he think outside the box? We had this thing where at some point there was a requirement to set the date. We didn't have calendars. You would just have three, drop downs, day, month. We didn't have so then, in order for day one to look good, we would prefix the day with a 0 if it was less than 10. So it was like 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, whatever. You know where I'm going with that, no?
I understand now, yeah.
So yeah, this was like, I think JavaScript takes that as octodecimal, not base 10, but base 8 if it's prefixed by a 0. And we had this problem and we, like, nobody could fix it. There's one thing that all software engineers agree on, which is that the previous team made a mess of the code base.
Today's guest is Tudor Barbu, principal engineer at Logify. Tudor has previously been a tech lead at Personio, software engineer at Davinta, Skyscanner, and many more. He's a PHP ninja, a security nerd, a trainer, and once held the title of Java instructor for Cisco. And yes, he even co-founded a company and ran a dev team before React even existed. Let's dive into 20 years of shipping software, mentoring engineers, and surviving the web's weirdest transitions. Welcome, Tudor.
Thank you for having me, Dan. Yeah, I've been around for more than 2 decades, and I can say things have changed a lot. I think saying that I've been coding in JavaScript before React, before TypeScript, some people don't really understand that. Like, what? There was how did you do it? I was actually, I was doing a presentation, so I'm also one of the organizers of Barcelona JS, which is one of the local
I
meetups
forgot about
here.
that.
No worries, I'm here to remind you. And at one point, I was giving a presentation and I was showing logos of frameworks. So I started with Prototype, Scriptaculous, jQuery, MooTools to see kind of like which is the oldest that you see. Like, I'm older than all of them. Which, yeah, it's been a while and the industry has changed a lot. And I think the most important thing we need to do as software engineers is to be adaptable.
That's true. That's true for
sure. Because, as you know, things have changed and now they're changing even faster. The rate is ever increasing, especially with the adoption of AI. I was actually talking to one of my friends a few days ago about AI and how the industry has changed recently. Because I see it as a good change. He didn't. So I would actually be very interested in getting your opinion on this because until a few years ago, let's say, especially early post pandemic, the pandemic was like 5 years ago, 6 years, was COVID-19. Time does fly.
Time flies,
exactly.
yes.
Exactly. Like it's been 5 years. And it's COVID-19. We're like 2025. And after the pandemic, there was this like boom in hiring, and now we're starting to see for the very first time in history, engineers getting laid off, which was something that was unheard of. Like 5 years ago, having like massive layoffs of engineers or engineers just not finding a job overnight. You just go
to
LinkedIn,
it's hard.
say, I'm available.
You didn't even have to say, I remember, even if you had a job, you had 20 interviews, offers per day, like you were bombarded by all sorts of companies. You could pick and choose technologies, you can be picky. And now I've seen a lot of my friends struggle to actually find a job. They're senior engineers working for 10 plus years. even more, especially in the States. You are an engineer in the States, it's even harder to find a job. And I think I read this really cool article by Gergely. I think we talked about it recently. And he said that right now engineering jobs have recently, tech jobs actually, not just engineers, have just went to the level of where banking jobs were 20 years ago, and they were like a steady line of banking jobs, and now engineering has just, we were in a bubble, I think 7 years ago in the hiring, and now that bubble bursts, so now we're back to normal.
I think there's also a maturization of the industry, because in a lot of cases, and I have friends that are not software engineers, but they also have like knowledge-based jobs such as lawyers, doctors, and so on. So a lot of responsibility, a doctor, a surgeon, or something.
Yes.
And for them, their workday was completely different than ours. You have to be at the hospital at 9, like you start at 9, and at 9, they had to be with their scrubs on, the stethoscope around their neck. The first patient was there. The same for lawyers, they had to be at 9 with a press shirt. And then we were like software engineers. It's like, yeah, I start at 9, but I'm going to get to the office at like 9:30 maybe.
Yeah,
Wearing
maybe more.
flip-flops. Yeah, maybe more.
You go to the gym, you have your coffee, you have your breakfast. Maybe you start coding at 12,
Yeah, if in a good day, and it was at some point there were also these TikTok videos or reels was like the day in the life of an engineer at big tech, at Twitter.
Exactly, yeah.
And was like, I go to the gym, I'd have Pilates, I have whatever, some fancy chef making some, I don't know, whatever food. And everybody's like, yeah, but like, when do you work? Like work was something like, I'm a software engineer. I just have this value that I bring to the table just by being there, being a software engineer. And I think now we're kind of growing up as an industry, and things do need to, like, people do need to show their value. You need to, yes, please.
Also, a lot of people have joined the software engineering ecosystem because of this. So you had like 4 or 5 years, 6 years ago, they started in tech because they know the money was in tech, not for a passion. Like we're a little bit old school. Like when we joined, especially in Romania, both of us are Romanian. Like you were paid peanuts when you started coding in Romania. Yeah. So it just doesn't compare. Like we didn't do it for the money. We actually did it because we wanted to build things. Actually, my question to you is like, what made you start programming? How did you get into the industry?
Wow. So now I'm gonna see how old you are or how good your memory is. So there were some Commodore 64 clones called HC or HC92, or in Romanian the pronunciation would be HC90 or something like that.
Don't remember them, no.
Those were like, so there were unlicensed clones of Commodore 64 that you would, I think they had like, I don't know, 16 kilobytes of memory or something, like, which now is like even the small, like, you send this GIF or something, it's like 2 megabytes, then
yes.
like just like a cat or whatever. But back in the day, so I started in on one of those, mostly like by playing.
Was it with the floppy disk, or was it with cassette, or like
with the cassette, with the
the big ones?
No, like a how should I say this? A cassette, a music cassette, like the ones that you would put.
I remember it. I had the same thing. Yeah, I had it. It was my first computer.
Yeah, and the information was stored on that cassette, and when you started loading from it, it would make these modem sounds, like this beeping, like whatever. So yeah, I started playing on that, and I was very curious, like, how does it work? I think I had this native curiosity, and I started learning BASIC, which was this programming language that was kind of weird because it wasn't like a computer of today where you have an operating system and then you can inside the operating system you can start an IDE or whatever. No, the whole thing was like a very basic IDE, and you would just type commands. There was no mouse, no nothing. You would literally have to type commands even to load something from the cassette. So you would connect the tape player to a certain port, and you would say, blah, load this from port 1, and it would start. And I was very curious so I started that. I was very lucky because I was living next to this place in Bucharest called the Children's Palace.
Mm-hmm.
And they offered for students and pupils these classes. Of course, at the time, computers were insanely expensive, so a regular family, we couldn't afford one. But I could go there and learn, and yeah, I think this was obvious for me from day one. I knew that I was gonna be a software engineer. I started that when I was like 7 or 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was when I, let's say, coded my first application, which was, and I remember it even today, was I've learned to do fors, like a for
Or
loop,
loops.
and then I would just like draw a disk that would grow. So I would have like a for, and then I would just increase the radius of the circle and keep drawing another one, and this would be like an animation. And for me, this was amazing. And then I've learned to do nested loops, where I had like the first circle would go, and then the second one would just change the color inside the bigger one. And I was like, oh, this is amazing. Of course, by today's standards, that's like that. But yeah, it started
That's
like
pretty
that,
cool.
and then went to this like PC 284, the first Pentium.
The Pentiums, I remember.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You had a Pentium at home, it was like amazing,
And then the internet cafes appeared, I think. They became super
yeah.
popular.
Yeah, we had internet cafes, we played. So I would say that my life was very connected to the industry. For example, I was the best man at a friend's wedding that I met when we were kids in high school, playing StarCraft 1 and Brudo
Mm,
in one of these internet cafes. And
that's
we stayed
nice.
friends for like, and 15 years later when he got married, he's like, dude, you wanna be my best man? And so yeah, I think it was always clear for me that I'm gonna do this. So I do love the industry. I do love the engineering challenge.
Nice. For
And
me, actually, it was something very similar. I was so I'm from close to Bucharest, but I'm from Telorman originally. And when I was young, it was popular at the time to use Mirc,
yeah,
MIRC,
yeah,
and we were doing this thing where you had to stay. You had like bouncers, and you connected to your server, and the chat was always online, and you can create bots on Mirc, and you can
yeah.
give them commands. And this really got me into like servers and how to hack into servers. We had all sorts of like IP scanners. You find an empty IP, then you hack it, you put a bot there, and then you can use that computer. So this is what really got me into it when I was young.
Yeah, we would also use like these Trojans, like Sub 7 or something like that, that would allow you to control remotely control a different computer. And it was like amazing. We were, hackers.
We were hackers, exactly.
Yeah, like of course we were like the worst script kiddies there were, but for us we were true hackers. And yeah, coming back, I think I a lot the technical challenge. I've become more pragmatic as my career developed, because now as a principal engineer, I can no longer chase the coolest thing.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I need to be very pragmatic myself, and I need to make it very clear to the other engineers in my team that yes, library X or framework Y is really cool, but we also work for a company and we have users and we need to bring value to those users, and we have features and things that we need to deliver. And the project manager is not just a nuisance. It's actually an important member of our team.
That's a pretty cool viewpoint. That when this came to you in your career, like in which part? When you jumped from senior to staff, or from staff to principal? When was the moment that you switch this mindset?
Yeah, sure. I think at least in my case, but I've seen it in multiple. You start as you have this thing like uh, I don't know anything. I know everything. Now I really
Mhm.
know everything. I don't know anything. As
Exactly.
time passes. So I think you start like everybody starts. You start as a junior. You kind of like learn and you break things. I was when I started coding. there was before Git.
Mm-hmm.
So we had something called CVS, like a concurrent versioning system or something like that. And each file in the repository had its own version. So it was very difficult to use, and we wouldn't actually use it. In a lot of cases, we would just like go, FTP files in
Exactly.
place and so on.
FileZilla.
Yeah. So I think, like I started like this. Then I was, maybe as I was becoming a senior, or I was approaching that, I was becoming very absorbed or very into the technical perfection. Like everything had to be like technically perfect. Everything had to be amazing.
Design-wise, you mean? Like
Architecture-wise.
architecture-wise. Okay.
So architecture, the solution had to be really good. We would always have to be early adopters.
Mm-hmm.
We would have to always chase the the coolest thing. And I think when I moved from senior to, more senior and then stuff, I think you become, a senior or a tech lead or staff when you start to look beyond this, when you start to see
Mm-hmm.
the business behind it, when you're starting to have a more holistic view of, I don't code to code. The best piece of code has zero value if it doesn't provide a value to the user, by itself. There's no intrinsic value in a piece of code. So I think this happened when my kind of transition from senior to staff. It became more clear to me that I also understood what agile means. So we were starting to have this true agile approach, not just waterfall in sprints, which was like most people, we're doing agile. How? We have sprints in Jira. And I'm like, thank you. That was,
That's true.
so I don't know, to give you an example, even from one of my current projects, we had a problem for the users that caused the layout shift, like a really bad user experience for the user, because when you have big layout shifts, you go to click on something, the layout shifts, you click on something else, then you have to.
Yes. Worse is it when it's an ad.
It wasn't an ad, but still, it's like a bad experience, and we want to have a seamless, And in order to do this, we had to convince other teams. So the layout shift happened because we were waiting for data coming from other teams. And we needed them to change their own backends, send us this data in a certain way. We were querying multiple endpoints that would respond at different times and so on. And then some of the elements also had, so we'll start displaying them because we decided that they need to be displayed. And then they will do another, inside the code, they will do another request and decide to hide themselves. So this required a lot of like the correct solution was like, okay, we need a robust backend. We need a deterministic endpoint that tells us what elements need to be displayed. And that is final. But of course, this could take weeks in the best case scenario, because you have to coordinate with 3 other teams that they have their own backlogs and their own plans to change this. We need to agree on how we do it. So we, at some point, we're like, okay, you know what? We're just gonna hard code everything in the front end, but we're gonna hard code everything in one place. So for the rest of that's gonna be our source of truth. All our front end is going to be built around that one source of truth. And when we have the back end, we're just going to rewrite that one source of truth to actually get the data from the back end. But now we're just going to take everything, just copy paste. I don't care, like hard code everything there. This allowed us to bring value to our users. So this took, like maybe 2 days to ship to production. Now the layout shift doesn't happen. We don't like, the users are happy, the project manager is happy, and the solution is far from perfect, but it works. And it was architected in a way that once we have the backend, we have one component that we need to rewrite, that hook that actually like React hook that actually fetches the data, and everything else stays the same. So for example, this is kind of like a more mature approach, I would say, because initially people start, oh yeah, we need a backend, and it's like, okay, but that's gonna take a month, 6 weeks, whatever. What are we gonna do? Well, what can we do? Well, hard code, so the technical solution was not perfect, but I wasn't thinking about the perfect technical solution. I was thinking about the user. So I think it kind of like this switch in mentality is where you start becoming more senior than a senior.
I couldn't agree more. I think, yeah, it's something, especially now with AI that can code, like the coding is no longer the hard part. Now we need to switch either to think more about the user and be more product engineers, or on the other side, maybe manage or work on infrastructure and stuff that AI doesn't really do that well at scale. I was going to ask, like, you've been here for a while in a software engineer. You've seen it all, I would guess, like microservice, micro front ends, monorepo architecture, iframes, module federation, everything. So what's your favorite? What would you think is like the best architecture for a project?
I've seen Ajax, like when Ajax was launched, I was here, it's amazing.
You push the button.
No, I didn't. I wasn't at that level, but yeah. I don't think again, like I don't think there's a best solution. I think you need to start from the problem that you're solving, because in some cases, some people try to over-engineer, try to apply these premature optimizations. I've seen these problems where people would start up, but what are we gonna do when we have, I don't know how many users, or it's like we have 5 users. Like let's cross the bridge when we get there. So I think, yeah, like I do like monorepos. I do like micro frontends, but at some point, if you're a small company just starting up, don't just do it. I think you have, based on where the company is in its life cycle, you need a different approach, or can have one approach or a different one to the same problem. Because, for example, if you're a startup, if you're an early stage startup, I don't know, you have 12, 18 months of runway, and then you run out of money. You need to ship. You need to show to the investors that you're delivering. It's a small team, and you can ditch the documentation. Information is stored in people's heads. It's okay, like you're three, 4 engineers, multi-purpose. Everybody's full stack. You don't need the most scalable infrastructure. You just need to prove the concept. You need to build the MVP, get it out there, get users, get traction. Then as the company grows, of course, you need to make sure that the processes are scalable, that you can, are a team of 3, 4 engineers. It works like this. When you are 5 teams of, 20, 5 teams or of 10 engineers each, you can't just like go and yell in the office, who knows how this works, or,
Yeah. Processes need to be in place.
Processes, architecture choices, again, in some cases, just cut the corner. It doesn't matter. You don't need to have like a really good abstraction in place, or you don't need to have the best architecture. You need to have the product working. So, and so, yeah, I think that there's no best or there's no silver bullet. Even the same problem based where you are in the life cycle of the company can have different solutions that are perfect at that point. But I do to be honest, I like a lot of Vue.
Okay.
I do React. So I've been doing React professionally I actually have one single project that I worked on professionally on Vue.js, but I
Which
do like
version?
Vue.
Vue 2?
Yes,
Yeah.
Vue too.
Yeah, it was nice. I also have like 2 or 3 projects on Vue that they're still up. They're still working. I don't think it's possible to migrate them to 3. It does their job. Actually, I have this thing like whenever I have to start a project, not a big project, not a startup, but let's say a friend comes to me and asks me for an app. I usually go back to basics, like stuff that I can do in my sleep. Like, for example, I always go with either Laravel or WordPress. These are the 2 frameworks that I work when I started. And I just know that if I start a project with them now, I can do anything with them. Like, if it's a simple project, of course. Do you have something like this?
Yeah, maybe Drupal.
Drupal, okay.
It was, again, yeah, I mean, it was like I started as everybody. I started on the LAMP solution, like that's, so now I'm a front-end engineer, but back in the day, there was no like front-end work. A lot of the front-end was HTML. In some cases, we would use tables to to position data. So, you had the whole page was a big table, and the header was the first row, the body was the second row, and then you had like a column in the table for the menu. So everything was just one table. We didn't have, there was CSS was kind of like just getting started. So a lot of this was just generated on the backend.
Mhm.
And then JavaScript was something that you would just do to add some animations or something like this, but everything was server side generated, but the bad type of server side.
I remember when I got started, the front end part was Flash. Like you had people who made websites in Flash, in Macromedia. These were the front end people. We were the PHP people, the data people.
Yeah, there were these, like Macromedia, Flash. There was, I think, another one from Microsoft that kind of tried to cut into Flash's dominance, because it was the dominating technology at some point. It was, first of all, there was no way of embedding video in a web page without Flash.
Without Flash, yes, I remember.
So whether like everything that you wanted to do with video or any type of like more complex animation, you had to use Flash. And like everything else was kind of like LAMP PHP. So I think in some cases, you maybe just use Drupal or any. I don't even know if Drupal still exists, to be honest.
I think so. They have a DrupalCon or something, a conference. I see it all the time. Like I always feel jealous about juniors or middle engineers now, and that they haven't gone through our pain. Like having to work with Internet Explorer 6 or 7, having to go through all that trouble, like having a million browsers open and stuff like that. I think everyone has it good now. Like with Chrome, you now have AI in Chrome that can analyze stuff.
Yeah, but I don't know. I think that provided us with a pattern of thinking and a way of solving problems that people now don't have.
True.
I don't want to sound like back in my day, like I was walking 10 kilometers to work
Farm
both
remembers.
ways. But please.
No, I was gonna say that it's true. Like it inspired in me like a sense of debugging that you don't see every day. Like I'm really good at debugging now. Just because it was so hard to debug in Internet Explorer back in the day.
We didn't have inspector. Like there was no
we didn't
console.
have inspector.
You would alert. Like literally you would have to alert things. And at some point you would get into a loop and it would keep alerting and you couldn't close the browser and you had to just kill the process and then start again. That was
Back in our days.
Back in Moya.
What's one of the weirdest or craziest bug in production that you had, or like that maybe funniest? Not let's say funniest, weirdest, something that you always remember. We
had this thing where at some point there was a requirement to set the date. We didn't have calendars. You would just have three, drop downs: day, month. We didn't have so then, in order for day one to look good, we would prefix the day with a 0 if it was less than 10. So it was like 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, whatever. You know where I'm going with that, no? So this was like, I think JavaScript takes that as octodecimal, not base 10, but base 8 if it's prefixed by a 0. And we had this problem and like nobody could fix it. It would also only appear it was very, very difficult to understand because you look there, you would debug it. So you would take it as a string and then we would convert it from string to number. But because it had a leading 0, it would convert it to a hexadecimal number. And then you try to add, like in 3 days, and it would go from I don't know, from 7, you add 3 days, you would expect to have, 10, but 10 in octodecimal is 9, and
I got it. Man,
so that was a weird bug. That was something that but I don't know. We had a lot. I think the worst bugs are these things that are time related.
Yeah.
So that they only happen in like certain days of the month, or they only happen in,
I just remember a funny story. It's
Go,
exactly
go,
this
go.
that happens only in a certain time. I forgot exactly the company, but they had small data centers, very small. It was before data centers were a thing. They were in a telecommunication and thing, and they always had some outages at random times, and we didn't understand what's happening, and the server rooms were somewhere in Africa. And we just couldn't understand why the servers, like everything was going down at random hours and random times. And we sent someone there. He went and stayed at the server rooms for a week, and he found out that the reason why they was going off was the cleaning lady was coming, and she would unplug the servers so she can put her vacuum cleaner in, so she can vacuum inside the server rooms. It was
Well, that's yeah,
things you cannot debug.
For I think these are really 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 weird bugs with time related, or when it's really difficult. It's we also had like or things that, for example, we had Irish names with like the something with the and like O'Brien, O'Connell, or something. And the thing is, sometimes you don't think about this, and they only happen. They're very difficult to debug. They're very difficult to reproduce.
Yeah.
I think nowadays you can just show a piece of code to Cursor or Copilot and ask, and they will just tell you.
And they
Like.
will tell you.
But,
You just say, what's wrong here? Something doesn't work here. What cannot
yeah.
work? And they give you like seven problems in your code. Actually, what's your approach to mentoring young engineers now? If Tudor was starting today, first year out of college or out of boot camp, what would you like tell him?
Wow, that's. I think first of all, like I would adopt AI, like try to understand the code. Do not vibe code for any. Like I actually told this. Do not vibe code. Try to always reverse engineer the code. Try to learn by doing this. Sometimes try to work without AI from time to time to keep your mind sharp into solving problems. And I think because of AI, focus a lot on the holistic view. Like there are things that the AI is very bad at, which is seeing the big picture. So try to understand exactly like invest a lot in learning design patterns, architecture, and stuff like this. I think nowadays with the advance of AI, algorithms become less and less important, because you had these interview questions
The
where
lead codes.
and people would have like, oh, you need the Dijkstra or whatever. At some point, it's like, I have this graph. Can you parse it for can you navigate the graph for me? And the AI will just do it if it's a standard algorithm. You don't really have that, but the AI will not know the entire or if you have multiple components that interact with each other, it's very difficult for the AI to understand them all. So I think this becomes more important. And actually, about lead code, I have a lot of funny stories from interviews.
Okay, let's talk about that.
So first of all, like
While you were interviewing, or you were the
both,
interviewer?
both. So first of all, one, as a candidate, I had an interview, and they gave me this really weird problem, which is to convert from Arab numerals to Roman ones. And you would have like one is I, two is two I's, three is three I's, four is IV, and so on. And I don't even know what the rules are. And I don't even know, because in some cases you have like is like 1,000
or 1,000. Yeah, it's 1,000.
L is like whatever. So you also have this weird thing that I don't know. And I was like, okay, let me try a bit. And the company was using tool that's this in browser editor that you can write code and the interviewers will see them. However, this particular one was, I don't know how they chose it, because even the free ones, they allow you to run the code. They found the one that does not allow you to write the code, to run the code, to execute it. And I was kind of like trying to, work my way to the algorithm, not knowing it. And at some point, they're like, okay, how do I run the code? The interviewer says, oh, you can't run it. And I'm like, how do I fix it? He's like, don't worry, you write it, and I'll compile it in my head and tell you if it's right or wrong. And I was like, am I on candid camera right now? Like, am I being punked? Of course. Yeah, it didn't go through for the good reasons.
That's pretty cool.
But yeah.
What would you about interviewing? Like, what do you think how you should prepare now with AI and everything for interviews? Because it doesn't work anymore. Like, I feel like the FANG method that was very popular 7 years ago, where you had like 7 interviews, one lead code, one tech, one. It's no longer the case. Like, what do you think the best interview pipeline is right now? What have you found that works?
As interviewer.
As an interviewer, yes.
Yeah, so at some point, I think the best would be to just so in a lot of cases you would have to do coding challenge or something like this, and you would have to build something from scratch. In a lot of cases, they ask you to build something from scratch, which is never the case. So
that's
in
true.
your job, you will never write anything from scratch. And this is a problem because as engineers, actually, there's one thing that all software engineers agree on, which is that the previous team made a mess of the code base. That is
always.
Everybody agrees on that. But there is merit to that statement, because from day one, when you start learning, every article, every teacher, every course that you take, they teach you how to write code. Nobody teaches you how to read code. So in a lot of cases, reading code is actually much more difficult than writing code. So a lot of people just like, oh, I'm going to rewrite the application in my image, and because I don't understand it, therefore it's bad, which is not the case. So I would create a test where I would give some legacy-ish code, not too legacy to not scare the candidate away, but something where I would see like how the candidate solves a real life situation. So the candidate would need to see what the patterns are there. Like, for example, in some cases, we had this thing where we expected the candidate to write an adapter pattern to kind of isolate the legacy code from the new code. So if the candidate would use an adapter pattern, this would be a very good, a very strong signal for me that it's a strong candidate that tries to isolate the new code from the old one or stuff like this. So yeah, I would focus more on this than.
Would you do it live, like in a call, or would you do it like a home assessment?
Depends. So in some cases in a call, yeah, you need. So actually depends a lot on the level, because if in a lot of cases people are stressed in calls, they don't perform that well because it's difficult to code when somebody's watching over your shoulder. So for a, let's say, lower level engineer, I would prefer the take-home assessment. On the other hand, for a staff or principal engineer, part of the job description is to work under high stress. Like you need, you have the CTO looking over your shoulder. And also an engineer, high-level engineer, also is not or is less willing to spend a week or whatever doing a take-home test. So yeah, I mean, again, I think coming back to the idea from before, there is no correct or there's no silver bullet in anything. You need to kind of like adapt, and I think the more adaptive you are, the better. And actually, I have.
Go. Sorry.
I have an example.
Okay.
About how to test how adaptive a person is. Because like it's like, oh, we want a candidate that thinks outside the box, and or it's good at dealing with the unknown or unexpected. How do you ask that? It's like, oh, hi Dan, can you think outside the box? Like, yes. So
how do you do it?
I actually I was in one of my previous companies. We had this thing where because the two disciplines like UX and front end work so close, we would have the UX for non-UX interview and a front end for non-front end interview. So, for example, we would have a front end engineer would also have a UX interview to make sure that the candidate has a good enough understanding of UX and knows how to interact with the UX and designer, and vice versa. So I was interviewing a UX designer, not my strong point, just to And I had some I received some training from the UX manager. She gave me some questions. Unfortunately, she gave me like a printed paper which I lost, and I went to the interview, and I had the interview with the candidate, and was like, okay, let's see, because I didn't know exactly what to ask, and I'm like, do you like Star Wars? And he's like this actually happened. Like, do you like Star Wars? And he's like, no. And I'm like, okay. Do you like
instant fail.
Yeah, no, not yet. I was like, do you like Star Trek? And he's like, no. And I'm like, come on, dude, work with me. Give me something. Then I'm like, okay, what type of movies do you like? And he's like, well, that superhero movies. And I'm like, okay, let's stop here. Marvel or DC? He says Marvel. The correct answers, and the answer is Marvel for the superheroes and DC for the supervillains. So that's the correct. But I was like, okay, I'm going to accept Marvel. Do you know, have you seen Iron Man? And I was like, and he's like, yeah, okay, I like Iron Man. And I'm like, how would you improve the UX of Iron Man's suit?
Okay, that's a cool question.
And this was like, okay, how do you, first of all, was like, I'm pretty sure that nobody asked this before. So it was like, how does he actually react to the problem? Something that he was completely unprepared for. How can he think outside the box?
Yeah.
And from there, we kind of developed this conversation where he was like, okay, I would have he had this, AI thing with verbal commands. And I'm like, okay, but do you think that in a fight, he would be able to speak fast enough to issue that many commands? And it's like, no. Okay, how do you do it? And for example, rely on muscle memory. Also on the website, you rely on muscle memory. The most important part is the, left corner, because that's where that's where your eyes look first, based on muscle memory and so on. We started from this, and the whole interview was very interesting, although it started with do you watch Star Wars?
That's cool. And how would you recommend someone prepare for an interview as the other side of the table?
To be honest, I sometimes just ask the recruiter.
That's a good idea. Straight up.
Just sometimes I was like, okay, and you can be very open about them. I don't expect you to give me the answer, but it's like, okay, look, this is I'm taking this application very seriously. I like your company. I want to what should I prepare? What would be? And they generally give you good answers, because the recruiters also want you to be recruited. They're not gonna break their I don't know, ethics to give you the answers, but they can tell you okay, this is kind of and it works. It actually works.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, I also do that sometimes. What I did when I was looking for a job. So it's a good feedback.
Yeah.
Good advice that everyone should take advantage of. Just ask.
It's simple, because it's not. I mean, unless it's I don't know, very thought out. You apply to OpenAI, or which is the current Google. Back in our days, you would apply to Google, and there were 1,000 candidates per position. But okay, then they're not gonna tell you because they have. But in a normal job, people will okay, this is what is important for us. This is what we're looking for, and you can prepare.
Yep. Very good advice. What's the nerdiest tool or side project you built for fun?
My nerdiest tool or side
Not necessarily tool. A side project that you liked and you built for fun.
At some point, back in the day, I was trying to write frameworks. There was this, but yeah, it requires a lot of. So to have a framework that actually works and people use, it takes a lot of time and effort. So I tried that, but the most successfully unsuccessful project that I had, and nerdiest, was a Vim plugin.
Okay.
So I'm a Vim user.
Oh, we should have started with that,
so
people know.
Yeah, you just stop the podcast, no? Vim user. And so yeah, I used Vim, and there was a plugin called Nerd3 that offered you like a tree, like, explorer. But then searching in this tree was very difficult. So I wrote a plugin for that would load after, and it would detect whether you have grep or ACK in the environment, in the shell, and you could press a key, you would have a prompt, it would create like the command for grep and run it, and then display all the results in a Vim window, and then you could click through. This was, yeah, and the funny thing was that at some point I kind of abandoned it because and after a while I was looking for something that does just that, and I found a different plugin that was inspired, was a fork of my own written by somebody else.
Also for Vim.
Yeah, for Vim.
And what did you write it with? Bash? Directly in Bash?
No, so Vim, and I'm talking about Vim, not Neo Vim. This was before Neo Vim, which is written in Lua, which is kind of a real programming language, but
It's
Vim
functional,
had
no? Lua.
yeah, but it's Vim had its own programming language called Vim script.
Okay.
Which is like the weirdest syntax you have ever seen. So yeah, I had to learn that, write the plugin, and then like I would execute this. I would try to kind of like guess the shell or write the shell command in something that was very shell agnostic, like should work with Z shell, should work with fish, should work with bash and so on. But yeah, the code was in Vim script.
That's cool. What's one opinion you hold on software that most people would disagree with?
Wow.
Like a hot take of yours.
Most people or most software engineers, because
Most software engineers.
People, but
we are also people.
We're also people. We're a subset of people. I think is this nowadays. So pure front end, again, like I've seen a quote that I really like from somebody. It's not mine. I don't know who said it. Was like moving from jQuery to React was revolution. Moving from React to Vue was evolution.
Okay.
So a lot of people would not disagree that Vue is an evolution of React. I do think that. Also, and coming back to the topic that we had earlier, I think at some point, good software is software that brings value to the users, regardless of how legacy and how bad it is. Adventure, as an entrepreneur, trying to make my own company, and I've learned this the hard way. It's so software doesn't really matter. Like or the code, if you cannot build a product, if it doesn't bring value, if people don't use it or don't buy it, or we can have the most amazing. So there's no intrinsic value in a solution that's not used.
Yeah, true. You have to solve a problem.
So exactly. You need to start up with a problem. You need to start with something that people go and say, okay, yeah, I needed this. For me, I had this with a MacBook, like when I started using a MacBook, which I got from work, because this was like maybe 2010. And I've seen like the gestures on the touchpad, on the trackpad. You had gestures, and so I was like, this is the most like, where have you been all my life,
That's true.
these things.
That's cool. I'm guessing like a principal software engineer is a pretty stressful job. Like how do you unwind afterwards? How do you like detach yourself from work and relax and be refreshed to go next week? How do you spend your weekend?
So, I mean, it is a stressful job, but it's also a very rewarding job. And I think if you do it right, it's not as stressful as people think. And I think this is the switch happens between, let's say, tech lead or staff and senior staff and principal. Like there's a switch in which you start being really good at delegating and empowering others. Because my job, it's literally not, so the value I'm bringing to the company is not related to how much I code. Because
but
I cannot outcode. Yes, I do. Yeah, but I code more like small pieces of, like duct tape to kind of hold the whole thing together. I do code. Sometimes I do actual features because I want to experience myself firsthand the problems that, the engineers have in the company. But, I think when you do it well and you delegate and you have like people that, which delegating well, it's kind of like a skill, because you need to give the ownership to the person that you're delegating to in order so that person can be motivated. Ownership is a very powerful motivator. But then you have the responsibility, so you kind of need to delegate without micromanaging. So it's an acquired skill. It's actually really difficult. I was lucky enough to have some really good trainers on this that kind of they showed me how to handle this, how to ask for progress report without being annoying and stuff like this.
So what's one tip you would recommend on delegation?
First of all, yeah, like have a very clear, define the problem really well, define the scope really well. So you need to solve this problem within this scope. Rewriting the whole application is not happening. I want to solve a solution like this. Then it's really good because I want to get reports, but I don't want to have to come and ask you first. So it's good to kind of like establish a drumbeat, like a weekly or bi-weekly one-to-one. You can say, and it's not like a report. It's like, okay, we're going to have like a weekly sync to see where this goes and so on. So having regular one-to-ones or, like a regular meeting on every project is not seen as micromanaging. It's normal. You have the Scrum planning, you have all these ceremonies. So it's much easier to establish a drumbeat, like without stressing the other person. So define the problem, define the scope, and define a really good way to get feedback and get an indicator of progress. So
I think, yeah, that's a really good feedback, good advice about progress. I also think like you should set clear expectations, like what you expect to receive. People know.
This is kind of like, set the problem, the scope, like the scope is this, the problem, the expectation, but the very important thing is the regular drumbeat, and giving feedback. Sometimes I found it much easier by asking questions than telling, like, so if I find, what about this? Did you think about this? I was thinking about X. What do you think? So instead of saying like this doesn't work, do it like this, like it feels very top to bottom if I tell somebody to change something. But if I say, okay, I was thinking like, look, we may have this problem. What do you think about it? So then it's kind of like we walk together to the problem or to the solution rather than I told him the solution and implement that. You know what I mean?
So you nudge through questions, like where you want to like sort of lead him somewhere with questions, and
yeah. And in some cases, I may be wrong. It happens,
Yeah.
It's human, but like sometimes the people react well. Like it's a collaboration. It's not like I'm not forcing a decision. But coming back to your question, sometimes to release stress, I ride a motorcycle.
Fast or
legal?
Just long.
This is legal. Let's go with fast, but within the limits of the law. And then I also like scuba diving a lot.
Okay.
And living in Barcelona, we have Costa Brava. There are amazing diving places. Of course, not as good as a reef in Belize or Sharm el Sheikh, like Ras Mohammed was amazing. But I do like scuba diving.
I like it as well. I did it twice, but it's so out of world experience, like where you're in the water. It's like just you and your head, quiet. It's amazing.
No, I've done. So I have the advanced. So
you have the license as well.
The advanced license and the nitrox. So sometimes I go with nitrox, not with air, which is a different mixture of gases in the.
That's cool.
But and also since I moved to Barcelona, I've discovered the vermouth.
Alcohol helps.
Like the proper Catalan vermouth, which is really good. So it's very good with stress. Let's go with that.
I've recently found the love for cava. Like I've never loved champagne. I never liked prosecco, never. But recently I've started drinking cava, and it's very refreshing. It's super hot and it helps a lot with everything.
Yeah, I have.
Okay, one last question. Sure. What's a book or a blog or a YouTube series or anything that can you like to read, or would you recommend to someone?
A book or I don't know. I mean, I don't really have a book now at the top of my head. I do like a lot of Pragmatic Engineer or some from
The
to
newsletter.
read. Yeah, but those are generally they're heavy. It's like heavy reading. You need to be in a specific mindset for it. There are these like TLDR tech newsletter. Sometimes I like to just browse through. So generally, I don't read something specific. I find these aggregators of information. And I just kind of like browse through what's new. And if something catches my eye, I will go and investigate that or, like go deeper. But I don't have like a author or a specific newsletter that I read. Yeah, I mean.
Yes. Yeah, that's cool. I like following also like small little things on LinkedIn and then going on the rabbit hole.
Yeah,
Also
yeah.
Reddit. I really like the React.js subreddit on Reddit.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, I just, as you said, go down the rabbit hole with something. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining. It was
You're welcome.
a blast, a pleasure. I hope to have you again
Same here.
soon.
Yes,
And
of course.
see you around Barcelona. Let's keep that, have a vermouth on the beach
And the cover.
and the cava.
See you.
Cool. See you. Bye.
Bye.